Well, good morning. Thanks very much for coming. My name is Chris Crane, and with me this morning is Heather O'Cull. Heather is a senior program manager lead on the project engineering team. And if you're wondering why are we talking broadly about project management? Obviously, we work on project, the business itself, but we also are the ones at Microsoft, I'd say, that think most holistically about the Microsoft project story. And it goes well beyond just Microsoft Project and Project Server and the new Project Online offering. Now, before we get going, let's get a sense of who's here. How many of you have heard some of the other project sessions, whether they're the Project Desktop or Project Online? Okay, there are a few of you. There'll be a little bit of overlap in some of what we'll cover today, but I think the adage is that you need to hear something or see something 7 times to remember it, so hopefully this will help some of that sink in. How many of you are customers this morning? Perhaps customers every day. And how many of you are partners? Okay, great. So, when we were thinking about this session, we were thinking, what kind of a theme can we use to illustrate project management without maybe using a lot of slides of sort of, studio shots of pensive people looking at Gantt charts and people looking at checking off tasks on device. And so we thought that exercise might be kind of a good metaphor for what we're going to talk about this morning, because we think there's a lot of similarities between exercise. How many of you exercise somewhat regularly? Okay, everybody. How many of you got up this morning, exercise? All right, I see one person there. The fact of the matter is that exercise and project management are both a lot of work. Exercise isn't natural. It may have been to our ancestors years ago when they were hunter-gatherers, but today we kind of have to fit it into our schedule. Exercise requires discipline. Depending upon how good you are, if you're doing something like golf or tennis or more of a skill-based exercise, it requires training. There's a methodology associated with it. And so we think there are a lot of analogies. I'm going to talk a little bit about our view of project management. We'll throw in a little bit of exercise imagery just to kind of make that real. And then we're going to spend most of our time in the product. And so Heather is going to give you a demo this morning in 3 acts, kind of 3 different ways of doing project management, from the very simple all the way up to the strategic, using portfolio functionality in Project Online. This is all live code she'll be showing. It's Project Online. The internet seems to be working this morning, so hopefully everything will go very smoothly for us. So if you think about the state of project management today, it's kind of a messy state of affairs in most organizations. On the one hand, you've got all kinds of work going on. You've got what we'll call tasks to start off, personal tasks. I've got to schedule my flight down to the SharePoint conference. I have to fill out a trip expense report when I get back. These are things that are work-related. They're personal. I need to manage those. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that today. Another type of work is what I'll call ad hoc or accidental projects. These are semi-structured work. Putting together this presentation is an example of that. It's not a project with a capital P. It might be a project with a little p. But there were 4 of us that worked on this. We needed a site to be able to keep the content, collaborate. We had one person from outside Microsoft who was helping a little bit with the slides. It was something we had to get done as a group, and we needed some way to structure that in a light way and get that done, but we didn't need a full project management tool. You can continue up to formal team projects where you might use project, and ultimately organizational projects where you get much more strategic projects, rolling out a new SharePoint system, deploying cloud across the company. And there you need, much more broad tools, much more structured tools. Projects, just like exercise, have a lot of different types of people involved. Participants. I may want to know what you're doing from a status point of view, but you don't need to report on it. The accidental or ad hoc project manager. There are lots of those types of people in organizations that don't use project with a capital P, Microsoft Project, but they need to get things done. Formal projects. And, executives that want to be able to get visibility into projects, sort of the reporting components. So lots of different people involved in projects with different needs. Just like exercise, lots of processes, Lean, PMBOK, Prince2, Agile, and a long list of those. Lots of tools, from the formal to the from the informal and the kind of semi-structured tools all the way up to the very strategic and structured. And finally, we live in a world of devices. Everybody knows that. I'm sure everybody has a smartphone. Probably most of them don't come with Microsoft software on it. And so you need to be able to work from a set of heterogeneous devices, tablets, and laptops. Now, at an individual level, this all works pretty well together. But at an organizational level, it's a lot harder. You need to bring some order to this. You need it to all contribute to sort of the better good of the business. Now, how many of you have played soccer, or maybe played soccer in school, or football if you're European? Lots of you. You know, you can actually do all of these exercises as part of training for football. I played football in high school and then played for 10 years recreationally. I was never a serious player. But clearly, all of these exercises here, a little bit of weight training for strength. There's a lot of contact in soccer these days. Lots of running, endurance and speed. And finally, you know, stretching out. You may not do yoga formally, but stretching, agility, preventing yourself from getting injured, particularly as you get a little bit older. So all of these tools need to work together for the better good of the organization, just like a team. And so Microsoft's vision, not surprisingly, is a very comprehensive view of work and project management in an organization. We want to bring together all of the needs of tasks for individuals, formal projects and programs, and portfolio into one broad product offering. And we want to meet the needs of individuals, teams, and the organization. Now, our approach is pretty simple, actually. First, we want to provide the right tool for the right job. And so, one more. There we go, one more click. I've listed a few of these. I realize that probably the most common project management tools, email and Excel, aren't actually on this slide. But we want to provide a set of tools that meet the needs of different individuals. So if I'm that accidental or reluctant project manager, I don't need project to work. I should be able to work in Outlook and in SharePoint, doing some sort of lightweight task management using the new task features in SharePoint and SharePoint Online. I should be able to use that timeline easily. But as I move up that spectrum, I need to have more structured tools. Microsoft Project Online. Secondly, we want these tools to be always available, always intuitive. They all share a common UI, and you've seen that UI throughout the presentations. You saw it in the keynote. But the fact of the matter is that consistent UI actually matters. I was in Brazil earlier this year, back in April, and I was talking with a large engineering firm. This is a company that's been building a lot of the World Cup football stadiums for the World Cup that's coming up in a couple of years. I asked him how his use of Project Server was going, and he said, you know, the fact that we started in SharePoint and people got familiar with that UI, and the fact that then when we moved to Project Server it really seemed quite seamless, actually helped with the adoption. So this consistent set of tools, fluent UI, always available on different devices, actually can help broaden adoption. And lastly, we want to deliver an extensible platform, and I think this works in a lot of ways. One is, we don't just deliver Project, right? Project's built on SharePoint Online. It integrates with Exchange. That has a lot of benefits. You can check off your tasks in Outlook on almost any device, and that'll flow back into Project Server or back into SharePoint. You can get a team mailbox from Exchange in your SharePoint team site. So, out-of-the-box integration. You can start an IM message from Link from within Project now, or PWA, the Project Web Application. So we give you a lot of sort of out-of-the-box Office infrastructure that works well together. But we know that that's not really enough. We know that you actually want to be able to integrate with other systems. So you can connect your Project Server to Team Foundation Server if you want to do ALM. You can connect your Project Server to Microsoft ERP, SL, AX, for example. And if you want to go beyond that, you can connect to third-party line of business systems. We give you a couple of ways of doing that, but you can connect to your SAP system, for example. And now with the new store model, the new apps model, there's all sorts of new ways for you to extend your project management environment broadly out into other line of business systems to get additional functionality. Now, we think there are a lot of benefits to this for organizations. First, it allows you to broaden adoption and participation in projects because you have the right tool for the right user. You don't need to force everybody into Microsoft Project. Obviously, we have a sweet spot in our hearts for Microsoft Project. That's what we do day in and day out. But you have choice, and you can deliver that to your users for whatever work they're trying to do. Secondly, for the first time, you can get visibility across the organization as far as what's going on. You can see what people are doing in task lists in SharePoint. You can use that as, you can have visibility into that resource use in Project Server. And so you can get a much more comprehensive view of work and projects in your organization, and that has benefits for better outcomes on projects, better resource management, better demand management, and ultimately better outcomes for your businesses. So let's make it a little bit real now. I'm going to have Heather come up, and we're going to show you a demo essentially in 3 acts, starting with the most simple, and then we'll build up over that. We'll pause in between each demo to kind of come back and recap with what you've seen. We want to try and land this, but it is a very comprehensive view that we've got, and we want to try and give you that in a holistic way. So I'm going to bring Heather up. We're going to start with the first demo. She's going to start in a couple of common project management applications, Outlook and Excel. So Heather, thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, grab. So I wanted to introduce everybody to Chelsea. She is our project manager today, and she has a problem that we're going to try to help her with. Basically, she has an intern who will be showing up very, very soon, and she needs to come up with a project for him to do. And the project needs to be cool because, interns want to work on cool things always. But it needs to also be something that fits into the business and makes sense to spend time on. And it needs to be doable in about a 10-week time period because he's only here for a short amount of time. So what does she do? She starts like most of us would in Outlook, sends the email to her team saying, what should he work on? Gets back the typical, funny responses, get me coffee, laundry, etc. that you expect. Then finally someone's like, maybe a SharePoint app. Hopefully you've all seen the SharePoint apps in Marketplace, so that would be something cool, but clearly we need a more specific idea than that. So finally, after a bunch of iteration, someone comes up with a task board. So if you've seen Agile project management, you have your task board, and you can move the boxes around as your task becomes in progress and completed and stuff. So someone has that idea. She thinks it's great, but now it's like, can we actually do this? Can we deliver it? So to figure that out, she meets with Stacy, one of her designers, and Vince, one of her developers. So Vince is kind of going to be overseeing the intern, too, to make sure that the development moves along smoothly and help the intern out. And together, the 3 of them start to come up with how the project should go. So again, we're in Outlook. We're sending email. Vince is like, here's some of the top-level tasks I think we'll need. He's missing some. Chelsea has to remind him. Stacy's like, don't forget design. We need some more work items for that. And finally, Chelsea's like, this is not making sense to do this in Outlook. Like, we're having so many emails go back and forth. Let's move this into something we all know and love, Excel. So now, to get more data into Excel, she meets with the team, and they come up with a more complete task list. And she might post it somewhere, or she probably just emails out an attachment or something, because they're not thinking that yet that we have to be that collaborative. But then immediately after you have something, someone always remembers there needs to be a change, of course. So now Vince emails Chelsea as like, hey, I think we're going to need more time. And Chelsea is, this is not making sense. Like, let's put this online where we can all collaborate on this together, and she's not constantly being the Excel admin for everybody. So with that, I'll switch over to live code. So we're in Excel, and this is the list they've come up with. So I want to copy it and move it to my team site. And Chelsea has already created a team site to use to manage her intern, or not manage her intern, for her and her intern to collaborate on. It's probably the better term. And now she wants to add the task application to it so they can track their work. So she clicks working on a deadline and says to add them. And then shortly you'll see a timeline added to my site, and you'll see task list in the left-hand column. So we want to get our task in here. And I just paste it in. And you'll see that all my line items in Excel are now becoming tasks. I pasted in just something very simple, 3 columns. You could do something more complex. You just have to make sure your Excel columns and your SharePoint columns line up. You'll also notice why this is getting pasted in, that the first task with a date is automatically added to the timeline. Again, this is just to help people get started. You can clearly remove this from the timeline if it doesn't make sense up there, add others, change colors. It's a great visual for showing off your high-level status of a project, so you can customize it however it makes the most sense for you. So now all of my tasks have been added to my project. I want to make this layout a little better so it's more readable, so I'm going to add some hierarchy. So these are all my infrastructure tasks. So I'm going to indent them, and now that just helps me give structure. One of the great things about adding hierarchy is you can expand and collapse sections, so it makes your project more readable, especially as your task list grows. Once you can't scroll an entire screen, it's great to add hierarchy. Or it can't be displayed on an entire screen and you have to scroll. So I'll do that again. And then you can have multiple levels of hierarchy too. So these are both motion work items. So you see I have 2 levels of hierarchy, so organize it really however it makes sense for you. And then we'll indent these 2. And you can also use keyboard shortcuts. So some people love living keyboard shortcuts. We support them in the grid just like we do in the Office client apps. And if you want to alert them, you can just scroll to the bottom and we provide them all to you right here. Or not all, but some of the most common ones we provide right here. So now I have my task in, I have some hierarchy, span my sections out. Some other things you might want to do is rearrange your task list because lots of people like to keep similar tasks together. So I have this add new task and I want to pull it up here with drag and drop because I think that work is going to happen pretty close together. Now lastly, I mentioned you have the timeline up here. I said you can completely customize it. So to add tasks to the timeline, the quickest way is just to click this little call out and say add to timeline. And you can do that until you have all the tasks on you want. You'll notice that all these tasks on the timeline are showing up as what we call milestones, indicated with the diamond. That's because they only have one date associated with them. If you want to get a bar, you need to give a start date too. So you could either add the start date column, or you could just select a task, say display as bar, and then give it a start date. So we'll say we're starting today. And I said you can customize it, so I'm going to turn this green. So remember in a little bit that I changed this to be green. And we're actually going to have Vince start it off for us. So before Brian gets here, we're even going to start coding. So now we have a beginning of a project started, and we're ready to go. We're ready for Brian to show up. He's our intern, remember. Things are looking good. So let's fast forward a couple days. Brian's now here, and we're meeting to work on the project with him, kind of introduce him to what he's going to be working on, the task board. We'll walk him through the spec and the design. And when we come to the task list, there's some information here, but there's not enough yet for Brian. I mean, he's a college student. We want to give him more details so he can manage his time because we need to kind of handhold him more. So we can still do that in SharePoint if we want. We just need to add some more columns. So if I click on the call out and go modify this view, I can add some additional fields to help him out. So I want to add %complete, predecessors. That's how you indicate one task needs to come before another task. So I have to paint the wall before I can put up my molding. And I want to do start date, but I want my start date to show up at the beginning of the list before my finish date. So I'll change the column order. And then this task list is just a SharePoint list, so you can do all the grouping and filtering, et cetera, if you wanted to. but I'm just going to keep it simple. So now notice my fields are there, and they're meeting with Brian, and they want to edit this list. So he knows when to start. We're going to start giving him some start dates too, so he knows exactly when he should be working on things. So we'll say he'll start that at the beginning of next week. This one he'll start on the 21st. Etc. You can fill that in. You can say, well, clearly you can't draw the cards until you can read the data, so we'll add that as a predecessor. Now notice when I set that as a predecessor, nothing else happens in the list. It's just there as more of a note to the person that, like, hey, make sure before you start working on this, this is complete. And we also want to add a couple more tasks. So we want to do theme support. You might have seen in some other demos, SharePoint has very rich theming. We want our task board to respect it. So we'll add that as a dev item, and then we'll also add it down here for our designer to tell us how to do it. And then we know all these are being assigned to Stacy, so we'll just fill her down and add her to all the tasks. And then we know Brian's going to do this one too. So basically, I can keep doing this over and over until I have my project plan or my task list built out how I want it to be. I can even, add status. So Vince tells me he's 25% complete. We can add that here. I'll have Chris unlock his computer. So now I said Brian was here, but we haven't actually seen Brian yet. We've been working from the role of Chelsea. So now we're going to move over into Brian's world. So this is Brian. Interns look younger every year, and he meets the bar quite well there. If you'll notice, he's in Chrome because he thinks he's young and hip, and that's where he likes to work. Citing note 2 for project is we now support the same browser matrix as SharePoint, so you can run all of project in Chrome too, and all the other big browsers. But I'm here in his news feed, and he's following a couple of projects, so he's getting all the latest news. But we want to see his task. Now if I refresh, you'll see his tasks that I just gave him are all here too. So he has some personal tasks. He has the Team A site task. So this is another project site that he's a part of, been assigned some work through. And he has the task that we just gave him, all showing up in one place for him. So he doesn't have to go to all these different sites finding everything that's assigned to him. We aggregate it for him. And then he can add more. So he can add another personal task. Or we'll say pick a ticket for tech fair. Whoops. Imagine I spelled it all correctly. So personal tasks are just personal. They're only going to show up for him. He can put whatever he wants here. I mean, he has buy his grandma a birthday card next to work items. He can do that. But he also remembers that he wants to do multi-touch support for the task board app. So he adds that, but then he realizes this is probably not the correct place to track that. So he has a couple options. First, he can drag it down. Should work. There we go. Drag it down into here, and now it will show up with his intern project task because that is part of his intern project. But notice it still has this little lock sign next to it. That means it's still a private task that's only visible to him. And he wants it to be visible to everybody because he wants Chelsea, when she's updating the schedule, to factor this into his workload. So to do that, he edits the task. And he marks this task as public. So it says make this public to team members. And then when I switch back and refresh the project, you'll see it over there too. And then from here, he can also very quickly just mark tasks as complete. So we'll say he's already done these two. And one other nice thing in this view, I'm showing his active task list, which shows every task that's assigned to him. Sometimes this can be a little overwhelming if you have a lot of tasks assigned to you. So we also have an important and an upcoming view. And basically, anything that you red bang will show up in important, and your upcoming task will show up here. And we have a customizable window. I think it's 2 weeks, maybe, where we do by default, but you can change that. And notice that all these tasks are on the timeline too. So again, a personal visual representation of all the tasks assigned to him. And as Chris said too, I marked the task as complete here. I very easily could have been on a tablet device or on my phone that through Exchange integration marking my task as complete. So now if I switch back to Chelsea and refresh the project, I will see those edits that Brian made. So see, I have some tasks marked as complete. And I have multi-touch support showing up. So Brian's working where he wants in the lightweight, his task list, and I'm still in the project site where it makes sense for Chelsea to work. So we're going to switch back to the deck.
Okay. Is that on? Yeah. Okay. So what have you seen here? We've stayed very much in lightweight tools, SharePoint, Excel. I'm not on, but you can hear me. You turned it up now? Ah, that's me. Okay. So what have you seen here? You've sort of seen simple task management for teams working in very familiar, easy-to-use tools, right? We've showed you Excel, copy-paste from Excel into the SharePoint task list. We've showed you the value of Outlook, maybe to kick off that conversation, and ultimately the lightweight task management going back and forth here, just using the new the SharePoint functionality. It's about easy collaboration, and you can see from the timeline and the new task views, you do get your status at a glance. This is not heavy project management, but you can look at that. What are my upcoming tasks? What are my important tasks? Simple clicks. Look at the timeline, get a sense of what's stacking up, and you can collaborate really well with others. So this is all new in the new SharePoint and in the new SharePoint Online in Office 365. And we think it has a lot of value for teams and a lot of the work that organizations do. The reality is you may want to start this way, and then you realize that this scenario needs to grow up. You need a little bit more rigor, a little bit more sort of project management, this time with a bit more of a capital P added to that. And so we're going to take a look at that next phase. Think of that as Act 2, where now this intern project has gained some legs, and we want to add some more structure to it.
So we're now going to talk about project management for your team. So switching back to Chelsea, we have great news. So our management's heard that we're doing this task board app, and everybody is getting very excited. But with great news becomes bad news that they're very excited about this. They want us to really do it to deliver it to the marketplace, but we have to do more work now. I know that never happens, right? But we have to add some work. So we know that we want to scale the app based on browser size, just so it looks good. And we want cross-browser support. Whoops. And then we want to add accessibility, because if it's going to be in the marketplace, we know we want that. So we have some more work, and we're actually going to add some more devs to this too. So we have Vince doing one task. Well, Vince is going to have to step up and do some more work. And then Steve is actually going to pitch in too. So these are some real devs on the team, as opposed to our intern, but they're going to help out to deliver this because, as I mentioned, we're getting very excited about this task board. So I've added some more people, and now my list is getting longer. I have more people, and Chelsea is getting a little concerned that is everything laid out correctly? Are we actually going to be able to deliver this? And then some of the dev leads are hearing about this and getting concerned that, like, hey, you're using our people on this project. How much work are they actually doing? We said they could consult. Now you're assigning work. Like, she needs to just get a better handle on her project. So she's going to open it in the project client. And to do that, I just go to the List tab and say Open with Project. Now what's going on right now is a project file is being created, and then the tasks are being synced down into this file, so you'll see the exact same timeline and task list that I was just showing you in SharePoint. And the great thing about this is that Chelsea can now log in. and see, she can work in the project client, and then everybody else can still work in the project side in that lightweight task list or in their task list over off their newsfeed, never knowing that Chelsea is working in the project client. So you can keep your team members nice and loose and simple, and your project manager can have a little more visibility. So now remember how I changed the task green on my timeline? Notice that green task shows up here. So that's a very quick way to see that it's the exact same timeline as I was showing you in SharePoint. For those of you who might not be super familiar with project, we actually start you into a little tutorial that will take you through 3 simple steps to working with project. And we even have help articles linked from those spots. So if you want to learn more, we have that available. I'm just going to jump straight into the task list. And now you can see this task list looks the same, but I now get a Gantt chart visualization. And I can start adding more information. So let's say I know this one is 2 days, 3 days. Layout cards based on status. I forget how long this one's going to take me. So I'm actually just going to IM Brian and say, and then Brian will see that in link, and he can respond back, with whatever response he wants. This is great if you have some tasks that are running late and you need to see the status. You just shoot an IM off to your team member, and they can let you know. Well, project managers might like that. Team members won't, but we're designing it for you. So he said it was, 3 days? So we had 3 days to list. 2. And you can start building your schedule out. And notice as I'm doing this that I see this little red indicator in the column here. This means that I have more work assigned to a resource than they can do in a day. So we'll solve that problem in a minute. Second thing going on is, so remember how before I could link task and nothing happened? Well, now if I link the task, notice how the task moved out. You can see that here. So the project actually will schedule your task based on predecessors. And then the other great thing we do, is if your predecessor moves out farther, we'll warn you when it's being violated. So you see that this task slipped out a day. Now I'm not following this relationship anymore, so I'm going to see this little warning sign here and the red squiggly here. So I can choose to move my task out. So I basically click on something called respect links, which does just what it says. It means respect the link. And now my task has moved out. And so I can go through my project and keep adding more data into it. And your basic goal at this point is just to build a schedule that you can really believe in and get behind. When you have all finished dates, it's hard to be realistic about the schedule and know if you can really deliver it. So we'll do some more for Stacy. Normally it'll take you a little longer to do this, but my team met ahead with me and told me all their information. So now I have a project kind of built out, but as you notice, I have some people with way too much work. So I need to balance my schedule a little more. To do that, I can go to the Team Planner view. And you'll see that I have all the tasks assigned to people showing up. I have my people on the left. I have all the tasks they're working on the right. And then I can see the tasks that haven't been scheduled yet, so I can start adding those to my schedule. And even where Brian has 2 tasks showing up here, I can move it to someone else. So I notice Steve doesn't have any work then, and I can start just building my project plan until I get to a schedule where everybody has work, and I just feel it's realistic and that we can deliver on it. So you get the idea, right? So now if I come back to my Gantt chart, you can see that all my tasks have been updated with this information. And whoops, I do still have an overallocation, so let's fix that because we don't want that, because normally when people have more work than they can do in one day, things don't happen. So okay, now we have everybody without too much work. We have a schedule mostly with dates. But my initial question, remember, was I have Vince and Steve, and I was concerned they were getting too much work. So I want to prove that they don't have too much work. So in Project 2013, we have a new reports feature, and we have a bunch of templates out of box to help you get started with your reports. So one of them to answer this question is the resource overview report. So I go to that, and I can see all the resources in my project, and I can see that Stacy has a lot of work, but she's a designer, so no one from design has showed concerns about this yet. And then I have Vince and Steve. Well, they have at most a week of work, not too concerning. or at least not to Chelsea. And then these reports are completely customizable too. So like she has how much work they have here, and she could, instead of showing like percent work complete here, she could really show whatever she wanted. So instead of that, we could show work, but that's kind of a duplication of our resource status report, right? So we're going to show it instead over time. Well, that looks really bad. So we can change our chart type to a line. And then we can change it to show weekly instead of days. So that way we don't get these huge dips on the weekends. And everything I'm showing you here, this is the same infrastructure for charts that you see in Excel, PowerPoint, Word, and then we just customized it to work better with project data. So like the time formatting, that's something we did because project's all about time. But same infrastructure, you can do the same theming, shapes, chart types, etc. So now I can see for my project how much work each week each resource has. And I can even filter this down if I want. So we said Stacy isn't really relevant in this conversation, so I can filter her out. And now I just have my 3 developers. And you can even create new reports, and they'll be stored in the file. So that way, if I do a weekly status report, I create it once each week, open the file, see my status report. I even here, if you see copy report, can copy that into PowerPoint, Word, Outlook, whatever you use to send out status, and save a lot of time for you. Well, now that I have this, I want to get it back up to SharePoint so my team can see it. So I'm going to add back my timeline view, and just again, to prove data goes back and forth, we'll change this to a different color. So we'll make it yellow. And I'll click Save, and again, what is happening is my tasks are being synced back with SharePoint, so my SharePoint task list will be updated, and that way Brian, Steve, Vince, whoever else is viewing this will have the most up-to-date data. And it would also, if anybody had made changes, those changes would be pulled into Project 2. So the sync is 2 ways. We're putting the data from the project client up to SharePoint, and we're bringing the data from SharePoint back down to the project client. So now if I go back to my site and click refresh, you will see all those changes that I just made. So see, I have the yellow task. Very quick way to show the changes are there. And then I have a lot more data in my project than I had before. So with that, I'll change back to Chris to recap what we just saw.
Okay, yep, I'm on. So we've taken this now from starting in task in SharePoint, as you've seen. We've added in the rigor of Project Professional 2013, working with SharePoint for what we'll call collaborative project management, right? So you can continue to collaborate and get those updates in SharePoint. Vince can continue to work the way he's always worked. But Chelsea is able to get that rigor of the project client, the scheduling engine and everything that comes along with it, anticipate problems. Are my developers overallocated? Is my schedule realistic? Do I have a view that I can report on? And then she's able to very easily use the new reporting features in Project Professional 2013 to be able to show resources, status, and copy those into email, copy them into PowerPoint, and be able to share those then with others that are interested. So we've taken that to the next level. Now let's move on. We'll move up the maturity curve a little bit and actually take some of this information and bring it into Project Online at this point.
Okay, so we're back with Chelsea. And remember how we just did that report showing that we weren't using too much of Steve and Vince's times? Well, people still aren't convinced. They want this project to be tracked just the same as all the other projects are being tracked. So to do that, we need to move it into Project Web App. So I have my same project here, and I'm going to switch over to PWA. And then I'm going to pull this project in. So I can go to Create or Import Projects. And I already have one, so I don't want to start a new one. So now these are all the project sites I have that I can pull in, and you see my intern project is showing up there. So now I want to add it into Project, or into Project Server. And if I go over to Project Center, you'll see that with just that easily, all my data now, once I refresh, has been pulled into Project Web App. And notice here's my intern project. Well, I know people need proof, so believe me, all the data's there, but I will actually show it to you. So if I come over to my resource list, you'll see I have Steve and Vince. And if I go to their assignments for the task board will show up with their other more real project work. So I have their customer service projects and their intern project that they're helping out on all show up. And if I switch over to resource availability, I can see that people were concerned, and yeah, it's always a concern when you're taking another resource's time. But if you look at this, they both have plenty of time to work on this project, so people should relax. Things are going okay. The other great thing that by pulling the project into Project Server is I now get all-up reporting. So if I go into Reports, and then we'll go English, through some of the templates we provide out of box, or you can create your own templates just as easily and save them here for people to use. I can now see how this project fits in, this data fits in with all of my other projects. So now it is opening the Excel report template and connecting it to the data source. And then because in Project 2013 we now also have O data feed, I connect this to Excel, and then Excel now has Power View, which lets you create really rich reports and dashboards. I'm only going to be showing you the tip of the iceberg here with what it can do, but it can, believe me, create some very amazing things. If you actually want to see all the reporting we do and see some of the amazing things, right after this session, 10:15, we're doing an overview of reporting and Project Server, and that one should be a very good presentation. They always like to try to hit top presenters, so everybody does, but they go the extra mile to hit it, so they get very creative in what they show off for reporting, but it's also pretty entertaining, so highly recommend you go to that one. Basically, what we're doing right now is just refreshing the report, so each time you open it, you need to refresh it to get the latest data down. So if you're on Project Online, to do server reporting, you have to go through the OData feed. Don't worry what OData feed means. It's an open protocol where the data is set up in a way that's very easy for reporting. You just need to know that that's how you connect it, or you don't need to know that, just open the Excel sheet that's already connected. If you're still on-premise, you can still do reporting off the cubes with Excel services, SSRS, whatever you were using before. But that's only on-premise. Online, it's all OData. We're just almost done refreshing, I think. And then the other great thing to mention is that, I showed you that reports library. We have 3 that we're shipping out of the box to get you started. You can have someone on your team who, there's always someone who can just create amazing reports, it seems like, and everyone else is like, how do you do that? They can just create it, save it up to this library, and then everybody else can use it. So now I'm all refreshed. So come in here, and you'll see that my project has been added to the charts. So see the 3rd project is my intern project, and I can even filter. So if I filter here, you'll notice that all 3 of my charts and tables have been updated. And, I can filter on a whole set of projects, et cetera. I can filter by custom fields if I had brought those in. You can, as I said, the things you can do in Power View are quite amazing, and I'm only showing you literally this much of it. But again, notice that my intern project with a click of 2 buttons has been pulled in, shows up in resource availability, shows up in reporting, it shows up everywhere throughout Project Server. Now you might be concerned, okay, you pulled it into Project Web App, so now are my team members having to work in a completely different way? No. So if I come back to the project plan, I'll even refresh just to prove my point. Nothing has changed over here with the project site. Vince, Brian, whoever can still come in here and do lightweight editing, and those changes will be brought into Project Server automatically without the team members having to do anything. Now, if what I have just said kind of scares you, or you're like, I need more control, my project managers don't want everybody just coming in, adding tasks, etc., we have an option for you too. And actually, if you're already using Project Server, the option is the way you're used to working right now. So you can have that lightweight SharePoint project and bring it into PWA, or you can use enterprise projects. So my customer service project is an enterprise project. We'll pretend you didn't see that as we go into our project site. So here, my project site looks the exact same as before. For the most part, I still have a newsfeed, I still have a doc library, OneNote. It's a SharePoint site, so I can do anything I want with it. The only thing you can't do is you can't edit tasks here. They can only be edited through Project Web App or through the project client. So for a team member to edit the project, if I switch over now and it's playing Vince, he could either go through his newsfeed again and mark his task off just like he was doing before. The only difference is if he goes to edit the task, he'll get some more information because it's a Project Web App task. Or he can come into Project Web App, go to task, and he'll see all the tasks assigned to him and be able to submit status. And this can be very structured by you guys, so you get to choose to submit time phase data, percent complete, etc. So we'll say he is 75% complete on this one. And then we'll submit it so Chelsea can review it. So the only way this update that he just made is gets applied to the plan is Chelsea has to approve it and apply it. So Chelsea, as the project manager, has full control over her project. So if I go back to PWA, remember now I'm Chelsea. I see I have some approvals pending, and you'll see that changes that Vince just submitted to me here, and I can approve it and apply it to the project plan. So basically, 2 ways of projects working, and I have a slide to help recap this. So I have my SharePoint task list projects that everybody can edit, everybody meaning anyone, of course, who has permissions to that site can edit, and all the updates are applied instantly. Very collaborative, very free form. When you don't, have huge, have to hit super important dates, have to have some change approval process, this is a great way to work. Then we have enterprise projects, which is what you're used to if you use PWA 2010 or earlier. And this is where the project manager is the main person editing the project, and updates are only applied after approval. So team members to update the project have to go into something like the My Task page I was showing and officially submit their time. This is great when, the project manager wants more control, or say, the customer signed off on a contract and the only way you can change this project is through customer approval, and you don't want, Brian going and be like, hey, this task is cool, let's add that, and getting all creative. You want that approved as he gets creative. So is that clear, hopefully? So I kept saying that we were building this task board app, and we actually did this. This is a real-life example, so let me show you. So I'm back on my task board site. Imagine all these tasks have been marked complete. Now if I go to my site contents and click Add an App, see I have a task board app here. I can add that to my site. And if you were in a session yesterday, we were very excited to announce that this task board app is actually built. You'll see it in a minute. It'll be available at GA for free, too. So we're very excited to have that offer. And it's almost being added. There we go. And we did actually, most of this example, I kind of fudged the task list a little, but we actually managed our intern project last summer in an earlier version of our task list. So this whole thing I've been doing is a real-life example. Names and faces have been changed to protect the innocent, but other than that, we actually did this. So here you see I have all my resources in my project here. I have my task here, and I can easily move these around. I can assign more people, etc. And my task list is all being updated behind the scenes. So pretty cool, right? Our intern, doing a little applause, okay. So one more thing before I send it back to Chris for the wrap-up is let's go back to the very beginning, right? When I had to figure out something for my intern to do. And instead of having this great process, right? I just kind of randomly sent an email out and picked a project out of thin air, and the project was pretty cool, I think, but there has to be a better way, right? So there actually is now. So through SharePoint now, I can create just a simple list, and I called mine ideas, but basically you can have people submit ideas here, and then you can pull these ideas into projects or project proposals, and then you can use project to help you pick which projects to do. So I'll just select the first 2 ideas, and if I come to items, say create projects, I can create my projects. Any field that I have in SharePoint, I can map over to a project custom field. So you see I have estimated cost, and I'm mapping it to budgeted cost. I can pick what kind of project to bring these in as. Out of the box, we have enterprise project and SharePoint task list. Remember, those are the 2 I just showed you. I created a third to be project proposal because we haven't actually decided if we're going to do this project yet. It's just made it through our first review process. So click create projects. And then if I switch back to Project Center, you'll see that these are showing up in my list. So see idea 1, idea 2. And now I can go through project portfolio analysis to see which one I can do. So the first step of that, which I've already done, is you need to figure out what are your drivers for your fiscal year, or whatever time period you choose. So normally, working with upper management, what are the goals of our company or department? Do we want to expand into new markets, improve customer satisfaction, et cetera? Then you rank all of these drivers against each other to figure out which one's the top priority for your business. So again, the tool will help walk you through it. Your hard part isn't the tool, it's going to be getting your executives to agree on what is your top priority. But then once you've used that, you can use that for ranking your projects and choosing which projects to do. So if I go into portfolio analysis, I'll create a new one. So we'll say this is for 2013 planning. We choose that prioritization we had, and then we pick which projects we want to pull through the system. So I'm just going to do this first set. And now I get to rank the projects against those drivers I just said to see how much impact they have on those drivers. You can do it here, or there's a project part that goes with the project where you can have a lot more information showing you, what does moderate actually mean for this driver? Like moderate means you're going to have expand into new markets, so it's going to help you expand into new markets by 10%. You pick it so people aren't just randomly picking these values, because if you let them randomly do it, of course all of them are strong. Or extreme, actually. So we'll say that we've done this ahead of time, so we have a little list. Okay, so now I have my list of things. Normally that would take longer, but we're just doing our quick demo. And I move into my review priorities. So now it will tell me which project has the highest priority. So my voice recognition, my ideas. So basically, this is the list of how I should invest my money or time. So now if I go into analyze costs, it will tell me how much it's going to cost me to deliver this portfolio. And basically, I can do everything if I have $301,000. Has anyone hit it big that can pay for our portfolio? If you have, you probably don't want to say, but I haven't heard too much cheering in the casino yet. So like most companies, we don't have enough money to do all the projects we want to. So say we only have 250. So it will tell us which projects to do. And sometimes it might not be the highest priority, because if your highest priority project is super, super expensive, it might make sense you get more value out delivering smaller, cheaper ones. But basically, it has said that with $226,000, we can deliver these projects, and these have been moved out. So great, those are the ones we would invest in. But this internal software database audit, doesn't sound like something you want to do at all, but say it's like required by the government to be, some kind of approval, et cetera. We all have those projects that sometimes you just have to do. Well, through the tool, we can force it in and then recalculate again. And now it's telling the tool that, I don't care how low priority this is compared to my drivers, it has to be done. So you see that was moved in and something else was moved out. And now my visualization over here shows me my efficient frontier. So it's basically how efficient am I being with my money. If you force in a lot of projects that are low priority, you'll see your pink dot starts to go really far below your efficient frontier. That's kind of a great visualization if you have pet projects that you're forcing in to show like, hey, I know you really like this project, but the software is telling us it doesn't make sense. So we really need to take a step back and see if this is where we should invest our money. And the final visualization you have here, just to prove the point too, is more of a scatter chart. And you can see that these projects up here have the highest value, and they get more expensive as you move out to the right. So like this project has more value than these projects, but this project is super expensive, so it doesn't make sense to do it. And you can keep playing around with numbers and some other metrics too until you get the one you want. You can also do multiple ones and then compare them later, depending on what you need for your business. So I'm going to send it back to Chris.
Okay, so in this last act of demoing, we've kind of moved it up the scale to a fairly high maturity PPM scenario. What we've showed you is what we're calling flexible PPM. Flexible PPM is really giving you a lot of choice in the way you apply project portfolio management. Heather showed you that you have two ways of working on projects within PWA, within Project Online. One is you had the intern project where they were still doing some reporting through SharePoint, and that rolled up into PWA, and you had visibility, including resources. The other was, using an enterprise template and adding the full rigor that you've been doing today. The benefits you get from this are, greater visibility into your projects and work, and then some of the great reporting that she showed you. So kind of wrapping up, what have we showed you here? We think we've showed you something really unique in the industry. We've showed you the ability to work in a wide range of tools. You've seen Excel, SharePoint, Outlook, Project Online, Link, to get your projects done. It's all an integrated platform. We think in the industry there are players that do kind of the low-end task management. There are players at the high end that clearly deliver robust portfolio management. But there's nobody today, we think, that has this holistic a view of work or projects from the little p all the way up to a capital P, and not integrated the way we're delivering it here in the cloud, or what you can do on premises if you continue to install in your data center. We think there are very real benefits here for you. There's the flexibility of the tools, there's the broader adoption and participation, there's the ability to get better business results and better outcome by having this holistic view of what's going on in your enterprise. But we think there's also something really quite unique here and profound for you. We're actually saying you don't have to choose the maturity level that you want to reach. You can start simple, and if you choose to, you can work up to be using portfolio functionality and aligning your projects with your strategic business objectives. But you don't have to. In essence, we're saying you're future-proofed. You can start simple and grow up. You can stay at project management, sort of collaborative project management with SharePoint, and get a lot of value there. And if you choose to grow up at some point, that's fine. But we're not telling you where you have to go. We're giving you a lot of choice and a lot of flexibility in how you get there. Now, if you go back to the exercise analogy that I started with, one of the toughest athletic events I think we all know of is an Ironman. Very few of us probably will ever do it. Very few may aspire to actually do a full Ironman. But it is that idea that you start with an open water swim in the sea. It's about 2.4 miles, roughly 4 kilometers. You finish that. You get on your bike, you bike 112 miles, it's 180 kilometers, and then, since you haven't had enough exercise, you all know you go out and you run a marathon. You don't have to get there with our flexible project portfolio management system. We can all benefit by doing a little bit of cross-training. We can all benefit by adding some swimming and some bike riding to our daily jogging. we're all healthier, we all improve our health and our outcomes. And just like that here, you can kind of pick what you want to do, and we think you can get some very real business benefits. Better project outcomes, reduced costs, and ultimately improving your business. So we've got more sessions coming up later today. Heather mentioned a few of them. You can see that there's still around 5 more, including a really good one on some of the new reporting capabilities we've got. You can go try this. So you can go try the new project in the cloud. Project Online has been in preview. It will continue in preview until general availability of our services. You can sign up. The provisioning takes about 10 minutes from the time you actually sign up to the time that you're able to go start doing some work, some of the things that we've showed you. So the links are here. There's information. Go get trained. Go learn more. And at this point, we'll open it up and see if you have any questions on what we've showed you. But thanks very much for coming. Thank you for attending SharePoint Conference, and have a great rest of the conference. Any questions? Yes, please, ma'am.
I actually have a whole bunch. But
Okay.
I'll stick with one. One of the things that I see in organizations over and over again, you show the personal tab. People tend to use the calendar for that. I need to do this. I need to buy a birthday card, blah, blah, blah. Has there ever been any thought of having some kind of bridge between calendar and tasks in the SharePoint world? Have some kind of aggregation, or how do you drive people to use tasks instead of calendar?
So a couple ways. So first of all, if you're kind of like her and you have lots of questions that you want to get answered, before I'll answer that specifically, we have people at the booth all day long in the exhibition hall. And also tonight, I believe 5 to 7, or look on your little thing, we have Ask the Experts going on, and we're going to have a ton of people from the project team there available. So just know you have those sources available too if you can't get your question here. It's a long question, you don't want to take the time. So the question around combining tasks and calendars, they've specifically been kind of kept separate for a while, just because through some research found people think of them differently. But if you go in like Outlook, you can get your tasks that I was showing there to show up in Outlook through Exchange synchronization. And then once they're in Outlook, they'll actually show up at the bottom of your calendar by the day. So you do have that ability, but that's pretty much as far as we've taken that so far.
Yes, sir.
I have a question here. You showed the combination about SharePoint and then go to the project online. Can you think about a hybrid scenario where you have to set, let's say, the SharePoint on-premise and use in addition project online?
For project online, you have to for project wherever you're running it, you have to have SharePoint because project is built on top of SharePoint. Could you connect the sites though? No. So yeah, you'd have to have all the SharePoint sites that I was showing you. Those would all have to be online too.
Okay, thank you. It was a great demonstration.
Good, thank you.
You showed doing a two-way sync from project back to the SharePoint task list. How do you resolve conflicts? So if two people change the same task.
I didn't show it today, but again, if you stop by the booth, we can show it to you. Basically, a conflict resolution dialog comes up, and you can see, and it's at the cell level, not the task level. So we'll do our best to merge them so you don't get conflicts. But if, like, I changed the due date to Friday, you changed it to Monday, the project manager in Microsoft Project would get a conflict resolution dialog, and they would get to choose which version to keep.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
On the business intelligence section, can we include reports that are project related but more to the bottom line instead of, let's say, for example, more related to the outcomes of the project, like impact on sales or things like that?
So in Business Intelligence Center, where I had all the reports, can you include reports that include data from other sources besides projects? That's just a document library at that point. We just have it for your project reports, but you could have, Excel workbook connected to any source, all there, so there's one place for your, project manager, executives, whoever needs to view them to go to.
You're using Project Online and SharePoint Online. Can you embed a project server
It would have to be under the site collection, correct?
Depends.
I'm getting a wobble back there. Do you want to elaborate, Chris, or?
You can chat about it after. It's a little bit more complex. So you can find the, I don't know who asked the question, but I'll chat with you about it.
Yes, sir.
Can any of the fields from the tasks in the project synchronize with the task list in SharePoint?
Question, can any of the fields from project be synchronized up to the SharePoint task list? Yes. Basically, you go to the backstage to the file menu, and there's manage fields dialog there. You click that, and you can map anything over. So, like, say I want a custom field that says, like, who the lead is for that thing. I could create that in Project Client, and then I map it into SharePoint, and we create a SharePoint column to show that data. Note, though, that you want to be a little careful, because a lot of fields in Project are calculated fields, right? Like a scheduling engine behind the scenes enters the values to keep everything in line. SharePoint doesn't have that. So when they go up into SharePoint, I can type whatever they want, and it mathematically won't add up until you open the project in the project client again.
How should I see the server? Is Project Web Access just on-cloud version, or then Project Server on-premise version, or the relation between those?
So the question is, how is Project Server versus Project Web App and online confusion? Basically, it's all the same product, essentially. Project Server is what we call the on-premise version, and that has your Project Web App too, which is the front-end user interacting part. Online, we call it Project Online, which you get through Office 365, and you also have Project Web App that you go to. Question is Project Client 2013 backwards compatible with Project Server 2010? No, it's not. Project 2013 only connects to Project Server 2013. If you really run the reports, the only option would be is save them locally in Project 2010, open them in 2013 to get the report, but then that's your manually doing that each time.
Yes, in the back.
Did you hear the question?
No. Do you mind using the mic? I'm sorry, there's a little bit of noise behind us as you were.
They're getting some cheers over there.
I think it was over, so they got some applause, yeah.
If you have a list of incidents, and because you assign an incident and it creates a task, can you follow in the same like a project those incidents, or how do you do incident reporting?
So incident tracking?
Incident tracking, because when you assign an incident, it creates a task to somebody, right? So how it could relate all of those things together? Because somebody might be busy not only on a project, but also resolving incidents.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, Christoph, do you have a good one?
Pardon me. In 2013, in the timesheet, we allowed the capability to track what we call non-project work and initiated from project service. So if you get System Center Service Manager, Remedy, or homegrown systems, you can bring that work that Christoph is doing in that ticketing system side by side with the added value work I'm doing on the internet, the taskboard app. So as a placeholder to bring that data in 2013 in your timesheets.
Question is there a way to specify which tasks actually sync up to SharePoint? No, it's all or nothing. Only option would be if you have a lot of tasks that you won't want to sync is potentially you could create a master project, so you'd have one project with tasks you don't want to sync, one project with tasks you do, and then you'd insert those both into another project, which is what we call a master project, and then you'd only be syncing the one, so. Anybody else?
Alrighty, thanks. If you
Thanks.
have more questions, come by the booth. There's always someone knowledgeable there to assist you and show you.